What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment to talk week 10 of the NFL season. We're going to get the panic meter out and talk about different teams chasing the playoffs and different players and how worried their fan bases should be about them. Every week, we get on the podcast and I say, we're going to talk about week whatever of the NFL season. And every week, I get a little bit more sad because now we're through 10 weeks of football and we're really starting to look at the playoff picture and start coming down the stretch here. And I think it's going to be a really fun stretch run. And luckily for us, the NFL always saves its best for last because the NFL playoffs are always fantastic and a super fun time on the pod. But we have 8 more weeks until we get there. So let's just enjoy them one at a time. But before we get started, just a reminder, you could reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we would love to hear from you. Let us know how panicked you are about your team. Maybe you're a Lions fan and your panic meter is at 1, or maybe you're a Kansas City fan and your panic meter is at 8. Let us know. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk week 10. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
My head is still spinning from Sunday night, and it's Wednesday, but spinning in a good way, at least.
I walked into my Monday morning meeting and it was very quiet at work. And I looked at my work friend and I said, how the fuck do you throw 5 interceptions and still win a football game? I don't, if anybody missed it, Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions on Sunday, and yet the Lions still found a way to win the football game. That was the guy you gave the midseason MVP to last week, throwing 5 interceptions out there.
Yeah, he had to set up his buddies to look good.
Still won the game. Still won the game. So today on the podcast, we've played 10 weeks of football. This whole thing really started because I watched a lot of the Bears this weekend. They were playing the Patriots, and I watched the entire game with my dad. And I was watching Caleb Williams, and I was like, man, how worried should people be about Caleb Williams right now? And then I started looking at a bunch of other stuff, and I was like, I think this is kind of the time. We've played 10 weeks. I think we can actually say that we've learned some things at this point. And I think this is the time that we can pull out the panic meter and measure a couple different things that I sent you and say, how panicked should the team's fan bases be about these things? So the first thing is, like I mentioned, Caleb Williams. We'll go on a scale from 1 to 10. Matt, how panicked are you on Caleb Williams right now?
Like, as an individual player in their capacity, I would say like 4. But if we're talking about panic about it ever being able to work in Chicago, it's a 10. I think he will be just fine when he inevitably ends up in Pittsburgh as their starting quarterback.
This is the way. Trubisky.
It's the pipeline.
Yeah, I actually, funny enough, I also said 4 on Caleb Williams because I'm not as worried about Caleb as I am about the situation in Chicago because the offensive line and the coaching staff is so bad. But the Bears have now lost 3 in a row coming off of their bye.
Mm-hmm.
They were 4-2 going into it. And in the last 3 games, Caleb Williams is completing 51% of his passes, has 468 yards and no touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so, I can't be like a 1 on Caleb. Obviously, I still believe in Caleb. And he's a rookie, but he looked completely lost the last couple of weeks against the Patriots in Arizona. No idea what he wanted to do. He's holding on to the ball way too long.
Hmm.
Like he got sacked 6 times against the Cards, and he got sacked 9 times against the Patriots this past weekend.
Yeah.
You let the Patriots sack you 9 times. And the Patriots said after the game, they're like, oh, yeah, we knew he was going to hang on to the ball way too long. So we kind of knew that we were going to be able to sack him a ton in this game and like hit him a ton because that's what the film has shown. And I'm like, dude, when
Yeah.
Gerard Mayo is watching film and being like, this guy hangs on to the ball too long, I have a plan, and his
Yeah.
plan works, something is broken badly in
Yeah.
Chicago.
I mean, I think what he also didn't say is I have no concerns about our ability to cover whatever concept Shane Waldron is running. I feel like there's a lot of people who just kind of like wrote it off as sour grapes, the JSN comment this offseason about like good luck with that in Chicago. Like they were not happy with him last year. And I mean, by all reports, Chicago turned down more reputable options than him as their OC.
It just looks so bad. And it's like, all right, I watched the Patriots game the week before as well against Tennessee, and we had trouble stopping Mason Rudolph. So to go from that to like watching Caleb Williams, like accuracy was horrible on
Yeah,
Sunday. He was holding on to the ball way too long, and his play has just gone downhill since the bye week. And I think
yeah,
that's the reason I'm a little bit concerned is he should be getting better as the season goes on
yeah.
as a rookie QB. And for a while there leading up to the bye, it was like, oh, he finally figured this out. He
No,
had a couple big games in a row, and
he's going through the same trajectory and honestly, probably for a lot of the same reasons as Bryce Young. Like Bryce Young, in terms of his film, like the first handful of games, like was not playing awful football when he started as a rookie, but he deteriorated as the year went on. And then when he started this year, you could tell he didn't trust his offensive line, which was better, or his receivers, which honestly were never that great. But we're seeing this 21-year-old kid just like who clearly loves the game, not having fun. Is not having fun with football. And I think that very much falls on the way that this organization is being run. Um, which, like, I am heavily invested in the McCaskies never selling that team because I think it's fantastic. But, I was talking to Carlos like 3 or so weeks ago. Like, Caleb does not have a chance there.
yeah, the trajectory I'm more worried about him being on is the Trevor Lawrence trajectory, where you have like all the talent in the world coming in, and you're this big hyped up prospect, and then you get put in a shitty situation year one, and then you switch coaches, and now all of a sudden you're going into year two having to learn an entirely new system and
Hmm.
playbook, and you got an entirely new coach, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so who? I think the most critical thing for Caleb this offseason is going to be who is the next coach of the Chicago Bears.
Yep.
Because I think it's obvious at this point they're firing Eberflus, which is the right move after what we've seen 9 games into the season. But if you do what the Jags did to Trevor Lawrence and you replace the bad guy with Doug Peterson, we just talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is that now Trevor Lawrence has continually not taken a step forward because Doug Peterson has not developed him at all. And he's the same guy now we saw a couple of years ago. So that's what I'm more worried about for Caleb is like if Chicago fucks this up, and they will because they're the Chicago Bears,
Yep.
that he's now it's a new system, but also maybe still a bad system. And he's learning a new playbook. And then like a couple years from now, we're in the same situation where Trevor Lawrence is in, and it's like, okay, now we're going to fire Doug Peterson and hire another coach, and so now Trevor Lawrence is on his third coach, and then it just continues not working, and we got to keep bringing
Yeah.
in new people and new things and keep trying to make this work. And like, I was a big Caleb Williams fan coming out of the draft. I'm still a big fan of his and still think he has the
Hmm.
talent to succeed, but I am concerned. I'm more concerned, like you are, with Chicago than I am with Caleb.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question because I think this is interesting. If we redrafted the 2024 NFL draft right now, 10 weeks into the season, is Caleb Williams still the number one overall pick?
I don't know how you can watch what has happened this year and not take Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
And that is not a slight against Caleb. I would still say his ceiling is higher, which is insane to say because Jaden Daniels' ceiling is pretty fucking high. I don't know how you can watch how things have unfolded and seen how good Jaden Daniels has been and not say, yeah, I'll take the guy who's kind of already playing at a top 10 level.
Let me ask you this. Would Caleb Williams be the number two pick?
I
All I'm
I
saying,
still
I'm incredibly biased here, but all I'm saying is that Drake May has been excellent in a fucking dumpster fire, and Caleb Williams has not in a seemingly better situation.
I think even with what I have seen this year from Caleb, if I'm Washington and I see Caleb Williams sitting there at number two, uh, like I'm sprinting that card in.
I agree. I think Caleb Williams is still probably the pick at number two, just because, like we said, his ceiling is insanely high. But man, watching Drake since he's taken over the Patriots offense, I honestly, I think it's way more of a debate
Yeah.
right now than people are making it out to be of like who, if you had that first overall pick, I think Jaden Daniels is probably the pick because of the success he's had.
Mhm.
But I think Drake May should be way more in that conversation that like because people will just be like, it's Jaden Daniels, hands down. There's no conversation. I'm like, dude, it's
Yeah.
it's way more of a conversation between these three guys than people think it is. And I
Yeah.
think people who tell you it's not have not watched the Patriots since Drake May took over. That's all I'm saying. All I'm
Yeah.
saying, because Drake is r- really good now, and that was not supposed to be his thing at all. Like he was not supposed to come in and be good.
Well, Drake is on any given play either really good or really bad.
Yeah, I sent you that
Yep.
stat.
Yeah, I had seen that earlier in the day and I was like, I know this is coming later.
Yeah, so since Drake took over the starting job for the Patriots, he's first in quarterback rush yards, fifth in big time throws, but also has the most turnover worthy plays. And I think that we're just like obviously Drake is still the third pick here. It probably would be Daniels, Caleb, and Drake, but
Yeah.
I just think like as someone who obviously I'm a huge Patriots fan and I absolutely adore Drake May.
Yeah.
Uh I just think we're in for kind of like a roller coaster, like kind of I could see him being like Josh Allen light, where he has those like Josh Allen seasons where it's like, wow, he threw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. Like, yeah, but he also threw 17 interceptions. But man, the everything is as advertised with him, where like
Yeah.
the athletic ability and the rushing ability combined with the
Hmm.
rocket launcher arm, it's just like this
Yeah.
kid. I yeah, I think his ceiling is just as high as any of these other quarterbacks. I really do. I think it's like top five quarterback in the NFL potential after what I've watched. But I'm super biased, so that's why I asked you because I'm like I'm sprinting
Yeah.
that. If I'm the
Yeah.
Bears, if I'm the Bears and I'm repicking, I'm sprinting that card up with the first overall pick for Drake. The only other thing I wanted to add about Drake is there was a story where they interviewed the Patriots players about a speech that Drake gave in the locker room this week. And the Patriots players were like, yeah, we were fucking fired up. It's like when you start hearing that stuff, when your rookie quarterback is like now the heart and soul of this team and has taken over as the leader of the locker room after starting 4 games. And the guys are like, yeah, we would go kill for this man. And then they go out and they sack Caleb Williams 9 times. It's like, oh, like he not only has all the athletic upside in the world, but the mental stuff and the intangible stuff, Clint's favorite stuff, is all there as
Yeah.
well. And these guys love him and they're all buying in now. And I'm like, dude, the Patriots, I think they're gonna win a couple more games this season and end
Hmm.
up with like 5 or 6 wins. And people are gonna be like, holy shit, like how'd the Patriots win so many games? And the answer is Drake May,
Yeah.
because he's that guy. Um, but so pick 4 was the Cards, and they picked Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you, would you still do you think they would still pick Marv, or has Neighbors done enough now where it's like, because I saw someone say that like hands down it would be Neighbors, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
I'll put it this way. The people that are in-house might look at the information and say, well, yeah, we'd go back and we would pick Neighbors. If that were the case, then I think we might we might just see the success of those two players be flipped.
Yeah. Yeah, Marvin has 33 catches for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns, and Neighbors has 61 catches for 607, but 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I think in less games played because of his injury, but I'm not ready to call that one yet. The one I think is really interesting is that the Chargers had the 5th pick and they picked Joe Alt, and I think he's been very good for them. But with their lack of receiving talent, I wonder if they would go back and take
No,
Neighbors. You don't think so?
you're talking about Jim Harbaugh.
I think
How long did I tell you this was going to be the pick? And he's been excellent.
we made the most money of any draft pick on that pick, because I think you said it sometime on the podcast, like way before the draft, and he was like plus 475 or something to go 5th,
Yeah.
like exact pick 5th. And I was like, I'm just going to bet it now.
Yeah.
And it, the last pick I wanted to talk about, though, is the 6th pick in the draft was Malik Neighbors from the Giants. But after watching Daniel Jones on Sunday morning, I woke up and I watched the entire game. And I don't know why I did that to myself. But Daniel Jones was so awful. And I was watching it and I was like, damn, shit. Did the Giants like really screw up by not just taking Bo Nix? Because they're going to have a high pick this year again,
Hmm.
but the quarterback class is very weak. And
Yep.
Bo Nix looks not very weak. And they could have just taken him there. And like,
Yeah.
I know Neighbors is electric and like really good, but we've seen how far that's gotten the Giants with Daniel Jones as their quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be better next season.
It's tough to say because we're also in that area too of like coach and GM are also potentially on the chopping block here too. Um, although I suspect that they might get an extra year if they're moving on from Daniel Jones this offseason to find another quarterback. You're kind of then committing again longer term, seeing how they do. It's all a mess,
Yeah.
right? And the reality is that the mistakes were made years before
Yeah.
when they didn't take quarterbacks that they could have taken when Daniel Jones wasn't working.
Guess which quarterback has more touchdowns? Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix?
Like total touchdowns or passing.
Total touchdowns. Who has more?
I feel like it has to be Jaden Daniels, but somehow it's Bo Nix.
Yeah, I wouldn't have asked you the question unless it was Bo Nix. Bo Nix has 10 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns this season. Jaden Daniels has 9 passing and 4 rushing. So
It just doesn't seem right.
yeah, I know, but it is. Obviously Daniels like
They
way more total yards and better
they've
completion
kicked a lot of
percentage, but
field goals this year though, too,
they
Washington.
they have. I have Austin Siebert as my fantasy kicker,
Hmm.
Washington's kicker, because he's averaging like
Yeah.
14 points per game.
Yeah.
Uh, and he got hurt, and I kept him on my IR and picked up a second kicker because he's been so good. I'm like, I can't let him go. So I have 2 kickers now. But yeah, Bo Nix more touchdowns than Jaden Daniels right now through 10 weeks.
Absolutely wild.
That's a thing. And I don't think any Giants fan would admit this because they all love Neighbors so much and for good reason. But I think they really might have fucked up by not picking Nix. And if they had taken Nix, and I mean, like Nix has Sean Payton, so like that's definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
But if Nix had like gone to New York and been like
Hmm.
this blue collar like rookie quarterback who's playing well and finding a way to win games and somehow score more touchdowns than Jaden Daniels, I really think they might have gotten another year just by that,
Yeah.
right? Because they probably win more games with Bo Nix than Daniel Jones. But thing two on the panic meter, because that was the theme of this podcast. The Bengals playoff chances. 1 to 10. How worried are you right now?
I'm gonna put him at a 5. And the only reason it's not higher is because the AFC wild card is surprisingly like not a ton of above 500 records.
Yeah.
So, uh they're gonna have some opportunities, but they have to get on one of those heaters like they've gotten on before. Because if they don't, they're just behind the 8 ball already too much. So
Yeah. My answer is kind of a cop out. I said 6, but this weekend I think I'm either going to be at like a 8 or a 3. So they play the Chargers. They're 4 and
yep.
6 now, and they play the Chargers, who are 2 games ahead of them, and currently in the 6th seed of the wild card. And if you beat the Chargers and get to 5 and 6, and then go into your bye, I feel infinitely better about that
Yeah.
than I do about 4 and 7 going into the bye. If you go 4 and 7 and you go into the bye, then you're spending the entire bye week being like, well, we have the Cowboys, Titans, Browns, Broncos. Like you start doing like math of like, okay, how many of these games after the bye do I have to win to get to 9? And I think that math is a lot easier if you already have 5 wins. Like the kind of feel like this weekend's a must win for them. Although
Yeah.
they're only 1 game behind the 7 spot, which is the Broncos, and they do play the Broncos week 17, which could kind of end up being a huge game. But like, I don't know, man. You start looking at the Broncos schedule. The Broncos schedule is not all that crazy. Like, and you start doing all this math, and
Yep.
it's like just make it easy on yourselves. Beat the Chargers.
Hmm.
The Chargers are a playoff team. They're going to be a playoff team this season. Like, you kind of need
Yeah.
to prove you can do that. Um, I don't know. I guess the good news for the Bengals is they don't have to play the Ravens again because they've lost to the Ravens twice by a combined 4 points. And in those 2 games, Joe Burrow has thrown for 820 yards and 9 touchdowns. And Jamar Chase has 21 catches for 457 and 5 touchdowns. And they still can't beat the Ravens. And I really think if I was a Bengals fan or Joe Burrow, I'd be like, what do we have to do to beat the Ravens?
Die.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But I mean, they like I said though, they do have the Cowboys, Titans, Browns, and Broncos after the bye, and then 2 games against the Steelers. So like you can make up ground pretty quickly and get on a heater, but like I would really feel a whole lot more comfortable with
Yeah.
5 wins going into that stretch. Thing three on the panic meter, the Houston Texans as a contender. Like as a Super Bowl contender, how panicked are you?
9.
I swear to God, we didn't plan this. I also said 9.
I think you and I coming into the season were both a little trepidatious about some of the hopes that people had for this Texans team. And
Mostly because they're the Texans.
also that,
It's the Texans.
yeah. But I mean, like, it really has kind of played itself out that like they just even when they're winning games, they just don't look good. It's kind of night and day from how they looked last year. I fully expect them to win the division and go to the playoffs, but I'm kind of 50-50 on them even winning a game in the playoffs, let alone being a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very matchup dependent for them. And they have a nice get back spot here against the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football this week. But I mean, I should have said 10 that I'm worried about them not being a contender because
Yeah,
They don't have Patrick Mahomes. So like literally every other team is a 10.
yeah,
But I said 9 because I thought Sunday night against the Lions showed how far away from being a contender they are
yeah.
because you played a contender and you won the turnover battle 5-2 and did not win because the offense has been pretty anemic. And like, honestly, if we look at it at this point in the season, CJ Stroud has not taken the step forward that people expected.
If anything, he's taking a step back.
Yeah. And if you go back and listen to the preseason pod, like Matt said, my my biggest storyline for the AFC South was, can CJ Stroud take the step forward?
Hmm.
And we talked about like people expect them to be a Super Bowl contender, AFC championship team, like playing the AFC championship. And we both said to do that, Stroud has to take a step forward from where he was as a rookie, which was very good. And it just hasn't happened. I, Part of that is because Nico Collins missed time. And this
Yeah,
is like 1,000% a different offense with Nico Collins on the field and
for
off the
sure.
field. And maybe if like Diggs hadn't torn his ACL and Collins had played, we'd be looking at something different. But the way it stands right now, through 15 games last year, he had 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks, 100.8 passer rating, and 57.5 QBR. Every single one of those numbers is worse right
Mm.
now. He's throwing for 40 less yards per game. He has 12 TDs, 6 picks is already more than he threw last season. QB rating is down from 100 to 89, and the QBR is down 3 points from 57 to 54 as well. And the offense is 17th in points per game this season.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
the defense is very good. I think this is a good defense. But
yeah.
if the offense is going to be anemic, they're just not like it's going to be matchup dependent.
Hmm.
But like looking at it right now, they would be the 4 seed and the Ravens would be the 5 seed.
Yeah.
And I would not take them to beat the Ravens.
Well, and the reality is that you need to, if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender, you need to have answers if something isn't working for you. And right now, like Houston really only has one way to win games, and that is to keep the score down and hope you can out ugly them in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So,
that's the thing. We talked about like how adding Mixon, if Mixon's like a really good running back this season, like that was one of the overreactions from week one was like, oh, if Mixon's awesome all season, then this offense could be super dangerous. And it's like, yeah, Mixon's been awesome all season, but now you're pretty much only a power run and play defense team.
yeah.
And
Well,
you lost what made you special last season.
but I mean, remember, like my whole thing about that was like, yeah, if Mixon is awesome the whole season, but thing is, he hasn't been because predictably he got hurt and missed several games.
Yeah. But at least
And
when he's played though, he's been their
yes,
second
yes,
best offensive player.
but that was my thing is you went out of your way to get an older running back with an injury history. And hey, I mean, if you can get that without, spending too much on it, whatever. But like that can't be the thing that you are relying on to elevate your team. Like you use it as a potential tool, but they need more options than what they have right now, and it's not working.
Yeah, he's played 7 games this season, and he has 151 carries, which is 10th. For reference, Bijan Robinson has 4 more carries in 3 more games
Yeah.
than Mixon. They're gonna kill him.
Yep.
They're gonna
He's
kill him.
gonna he's gonna get hurt again.
Yeah, Joe Mixon's getting more touches per game than Derrick Henry. They're or at least carries. He's carrying the ball 21.6 times per game. Derrick Henry is carrying the ball 18.4 times per game. And Derrick Henry leads the league in attempts. If Joe Mixon hadn't gotten hurt, he would be blowing Derrick Henry out of the water for carries. Okay, I guess the next thing should be Joe Mixon's health, or scale from 1 to 10. How panicked are we?
10.
15. The next thing I wrote down was, who would you want to be the least between the New York Jets and the Dallas Cowboys? And I just made it like an either or category because I think we're way past being on the panic scale for these two teams. Like we're past like panicked. The 10 level on the panic scale was like weeks ago for both these teams, and now we're like post panic. But who would you want to be less moving forward between the Jets and the Cowboys?
Oh,
It's a great question
either.
for this podcast because we do not like either of these teams.
Not that their situation is good, but the Jets, I think, have more cap flexibility than the Cowboys do without just trading away their most valuable asset.
I said I would rather be the Jets for 2 reasons. One is that they can get out of the Aaron Rodgers deal faster than Dallas can get out of Dak Prescott.
Yep.
Two, and probably more importantly, another Trump presidency means that Jets owner Woody Johnson will very likely return to his post as ambassador to the UK. And someone else will have to be the like operational owner of the Jets for 4 years because he's not allowed to do both. Can't do both. So someone else will be running the Jets for 4 years. Nobody else will ever be running the Cowboys ever.
Yeah, well, even from the grave, I think
Yeah,
Jerry's gonna be puppeteering that thing.
we will get to World War III. The world will be a nuclear wasteland, and the only thing that will exist is Jerry World, with the sun still somehow shining through the window directly into Dak Prescott's eyes, and Jerry Jones will be 500 and still running the Dallas Cowboys into the ground.
The audacity to try and defend having your players blinded by the construction of your stadium.
This was my
Like,
favorite thing. My favorite thing from this week was they were like asking him about it, and he's like, "We know where the sun is. Do you, Jerry?"
you knowing where it is doesn't make your players not blinded by it.
The fact that, like, let's assume that they did know where the sun was going to be during games and they built it that way anyway is possibly dumber than if they're like, "Oh yeah, we built it. We didn't know this was going to happen." Now they got to get somebody up there to put up some curtains during 4 o'clock kickoffs. I forget what stadium this was, but there was a game in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago where the sun was shining through one of the windows. And so one of the wings on one half of the court, the guys literally could not shoot from the wing because the sun was like literally directly into their eyes as they were trying to shoot. And it was like worse than Jerry World. And when you watched it on TV, the whole broadcast looked normal except for this one part of the court that was like almost white and
Just
you couldn't see
washed
it. So it
out.
was so bad.
Yeah.
It was in like Indiana or something. It was like some field house and they're like, yeah,
Of
welcome to the
course it would be Indiana.
I know. I was like, did they not play basketball in Indiana? I kind of thought that's what they were famous for. It was horrific, but that's what I was thinking of when I was watching this whole Jerry Jones thing. Is I was like, you clearly did not know where the sun was going to be. But yeah,
So dumb.
I think the answer is that
Yeah.
you would rather be the Jets.
Are there potential desperate suitors that Dak could be a trade option for?
I don't think so, just because one, I don't think Jerry would ever admit that it was a mistake to give him that contract.
Yeah.
But two, I don't know exactly what the number is, but I imagine the dead cap hit on
Yeah.
trading Dak Prescott is
Oh,
fucking
right. Yeah.
brutal.
Especially right now. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I mean, Dak Prescott is like a good enough quarterback that I think, I'm not saying he's a good quarterback. I'm just saying he's good enough that I think other teams would be interested, like quarterback
Yeah.
needy teams. Like maybe the Colts would be interested. But I don't, I really don't think they would ever trade him. Even if they
Yeah.
didn't have the dead cap hit, I don't think they'd ever trade him because that would be like Jerry Jones admitting a
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
I don't think he can do it.
Because, I mean, like, they're staring down a situation where they either have to pay Micah Parsons and literally just be stuck with a team that they know is bad and not be able to do anything about it, or they have to start trading pieces, Micah being obviously the most valuable piece that they have, uh, to try and start rebuilding that roster. And neither of those are particularly palatable.
Yeah, we already know what the destiny of the Dallas Cowboys is. I already laid it out on this podcast, but I'll do it again. The Cowboys will finish with a top 10 pick and they will look at the season and say, well, if it wasn't for all the injuries, we would have been good. And it's Rico Dowdle's fault for not being a
Yep.
better running back. And we need to draft a running back because the last time we drafted a running back in the top 10, it was Zeke Elliott, and it worked out for a number of years. And he was very good. And we need to do it again. And they're going to draft Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State, who is incredible. And that's just what it's going to be. I don't, what are the, someone tell me the odds right now on the Cowboys drafting Ashton Jeanty. The only thing DraftKings has posted for the NFL draft right now is who's going to be the number one overall pick.
Yeah.
And it's Shadur Sanders at plus 200, Travis Hunter at plus 400, Cam Ward at plus 700. Funny enough, if you go on Tankathon and look at their mock draft, the Cowboys have the 11th pick right now, and Tankathon actually does have them drafting Ashton Jeanty at 11.
They know.
It's so going to happen. It's just so, this is the destiny of the Dallas Cowboys. And then they come back next season and they're like, okay, now we have a really good running back. We're ready to go. We don't have to rely on Rico Dowdle. And it's not Rico Dowdle's fault. Rico Dowdle's been good. And I want everybody to know right now that in 4 months, when everybody's blaming Rico Dowdle for the Cowboys not being better, that it was not his fault. God damn it. Poor Rico. The last two I had for the panic meter are really related. So I guess we could do them together. The Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams. Chances to make the playoffs. How panicked would you be right now? They're both 4-5.
I'm gonna give them both a 6. Obviously, they're both behind the 8 ball. But they got division games left. And if either of those teams just takes care of business in their division games, like they'll be fine, probably. Um, because especially since the teams ahead of them are just not they've not been humming on they've not been firing on all cylinders this year.
Yeah.
Uh like so
I think the hard thing for both these teams is like it's not like the AFC where it's like, yeah, that 7 seed is going to be 8, 9 win
No.
range. Like
Yeah.
right now, the Packers have the 7th seed in the NFC and they're six and
Yeah.
three.
No, you have to win the division.
Yeah. Like, is Arizona good? Are we ready to have that conversation or do we need more
No.
data points?
No.
They're 6 and 4 now, and they have a plus 18 point differential, which San Francisco has a plus 31. The Rams are minus 32, and the Seahawks are minus 11. I
Yeah.
think Arizona winning that division would probably be like the most stunning thing of the year. Like if we get to the playoffs and we're like, well, Arizona's the 4 seed, it's like, what the fuck? That would be another one where it's like, yeah, Arizona's the four, and well, oh God. Oh God. Right now, Arizona would be the four and Minnesota would be the five. Arizona might be in the second round of the playoffs, Matt.
That's incredible.
Horrifying thought. I gave the Rams a 6. I agree. I felt way better about them before they only put up 15 points against Miami on Monday
Hmm.
Night Football. Like I still don't understand how an offense with Stafford, Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua, Kyron
Yeah.
Williams gets 5 field goals. But
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting there watching that game, and I mean, the entire time, like the offense as a whole just never looked crisp. I mean, I don't want to hear about the offensive line because we've known that's an issue all year. Uh, there absolutely could have and should have been a game plan to get something rolling that was not dependent on, you know, long drop backs. Like some quick game could have gotten them going. It does not feel like there has been really any sort of concerted effort to get Cooper Cup going since he's been back. Which, I mean, nothing against Puka Nacua, he's great, but like I think you kind of want both of them to feel like they are a threat. And right now it just doesn't feel like that. But they really didn't feel like they were like giving it their all. I felt like they were trying to win that game with their hand tied behind their back almost, you know.
yeah, it was weird. Um, but so I felt better for that game. Now I'm like kind of don't know how to feel. Their strength
Yeah.
of schedule remaining is 16th, which isn't all that bad. So we'll see. I'm more worried about Seattle. I had an 8 for Seattle. They really needed that bye after they'd lost 5 of 6
Yeah.
going into that bye. And unfortunately for them, the schedule doesn't get much easier. They have the eighth toughest strength of schedule remaining.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I kind of feel the same way about them I felt about the Bengals. It's like, okay, they play San Francisco this weekend.
Hmm.
They're one game behind San Francisco in the division. If you can beat San Francisco this weekend, I will feel a hell of a lot better
Yeah.
about you. But if you lose, then it's tough. And like I could see this spiraling out of control for them because the post bye schedule is like 3 of their first 4 are Arizona twice and San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you win those, then like you said, you're right back in a playoff spot and
Hmm.
probably leading the division. If you lose those, your season's over.
Yep.
So critical stretch. I mean, critical stretch for everybody, week
Yeah.
11 and beyond, but like for them, especially these next 4 weeks, it's like this is going to decide if you make the playoffs or not.
Why I kind of kept them at 6-2 was because of their schedule. Uh, if they had already played like 4 or 5 of their 6 division games already, and they were sitting in this position, I think I'd be much more concerned. But they have several uh division games left to take advantage of. And yeah, sure, not going to be easy, but like having the opportunity to knock the other team down in your division while getting a win definitely simplifies the process, rather than like needing them to lose games as well.
That's fair, but also we might just have to admit the Cardinals are good and that we're going to be in a horrifying situation that we're in right now, where the 4, 5, and 6 seed in the NFC is the Cardinals, the Vikings, and the Commanders.
Or are the Cardinals just that Giants team from a few years ago?
I can't believe they've won 6 games. The Cardinals are 4-1 in their last 5, and it's like the schedule has not been great, but I mean they beat the 49ers, they got killed by the Packers, they stole one against the Chargers, and then stole one in Miami and beat the Bears and the Jets. So like, yeah, no, we're not ready to have the Cardinals are good conversation yet. We'll do
Yeah,
that in a couple weeks. We're going to do contenders and pretenders, I think, after week
yeah.
12, and maybe we'll see where they're at and talk about them more. But just looking at it right now, the Cards, Vikings, and Commanders all being in the playoffs is like mind blown. All right, Bolds and Scolds, America's most favorite segment for week 10. It is your week to go first with your bold.
Look at you remembering,
I
because I
didn't.
certainly didn't.
I didn't, but if you just say it with confidence, nobody else remembers. Like nobody who's listening to this is like, all right, it's Matt's week to go first. Let's see if he remembers.
I don't know. I feel like your dad's keeping track.
Oh, he 100% is. He's going to message me in like 2 weeks. It'd be like, oh, it's actually Matt's week to go first. And you went first this week, just so you know.
You've actually started 57%.
Can I tell you my dad's favorite part of the podcast is when we talk about him on the podcast?
That is an extremely Jim thing to say.
Yeah, context doesn't matter. He just likes to be thought of. Oh,
Uh,
we love you,
all
Dad.
right.
We love you.
Well, I think you all know the general direction that I'm going in. But
General direction.
Carlton Davis the third, like you single-handedly turned that game around.
Should we just
Those,
change Matt's segment to Lion of the Week for Bolt?
well, when they're playing this good, it's kind of hard to not pick them all the time.
I know, but what we should do is just like you pick a Lion every week, and every week I'll pick Drake May. We'll just have fun.
Yeah. You watch that game and there's not a chance in hell that the Lions win that game if he doesn't like literally take over the game. That was absolute man shit. Incredible. The most clutch shit I've seen from a defender in a minute. And yeah, I still don't really know what I saw, but that was the wildest shit I've ever seen.
My bold of the week is Russell Wilson, Steelers quarterback. So we gave the Steelers and Mike Tomlin a lot of shit when they decided to switch from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. And one thing that we said was like, you better win. You better be right, because if you switch quarterbacks and you start losing, because they were 4-2 at the time, if you switch quarterbacks and start losing, then people are going to be pissed and you're going to lose that locker room. And all of a sudden you have a bigger problem. And Russell Wilson had looked pretty washed in his time in Denver.
Hmm.
So since taking over, Russell Wilson is 3-0. They beat the Commanders in the game of the week, really, this past week, 28-27. He's only completed 59% of his passes and only completed 50% of his passes against the Commanders this week. I keep calling them the Commanders. And I just want everybody to know how stupid that sounds and how much cooler it would be if I said he only completed 50% of his passes against the Fighting Georges this past week. You pay us our $5 million for the trademark and you can have it. You guys can have it. You're brand new owners. You can just rebrand. That's why Ben Johnson didn't go there.
Yeah.
Talked about that last week. He was like, I don't want to wear Commanders gear. I want to wear fighting George's gear. Pay us our 5 million. Anyway, he only completed 50% of his passes this week, but granted, it's a small sample size. It's only 3 games. Russell Wilson is at 8.7 yards per attempt right now, which would be the highest of his entire career. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, 737 yards, which is 246 per game. Much better than Fields' 184, and completely screwing my bold prediction that they would throw for less yards this year than they did last year. I need Russell Wilson to calm down. More importantly, the Steelers are averaging just over 30 points per game. They're at like 30.33 points per game with Russell Wilson as the starter, and with Fields, they're at 20.66. So, I mean, it seems like the right call. The maybe the more shocking thing than the fact that he's playing pretty well is that his teammates actually seem to like him, which is the first for Russell Wilson. So, like Pickens is
It,
happy, which is
yeah,
also kind
it
of crazy.
it is a locker room cultivated by Mike Tomlin, who I think you and I would both agree is a pretty insufferable human being. Uh, but to each their own.
Yeah.
Uh,
Pretty
that
pretty
that
insufferable person, but also like a really fucking good coach.
yes, like 100%. Um, so I mean, I guess in hindsight, like that is the kind of locker room that he was probably going to fit in. Yeah, and I think like it makes a big difference just for that offense to have someone that isn't afraid to just put the ball downfield and let Pickens go get it.
Let me throw this at you real quick before we go to your scold. Where do you think Mike Tomlin ranks in all-time regular season wins for a coach?
The top 20?
Yeah, he's 11th. He's 11th all time in wins. To be fair,
Yeah.
Jeff Fisher is 12th. At 100, Jeff Fisher was 173 and 165. Is awesome. But Mike Tomlin is 180 and 102 right now. So he's 6 behind Chuck Knox and 10 behind Dan Reeves, 13 behind Chuck Knoll. So that's like pretty big names
Yeah.
coming up for him. So it gets like it's almost like quarterbacks with almost any quarterback stat or like Super Bowl wins and stuff where it's like, these guys, it's like, oh, he's 11th with 180. But then you start looking at like you get into the top 5 and it's like, okay, yeah, you got to have like 250 to be in the top 5. And like number 1 is 328. So like he's further away than number 1 than he is from like number 100 and he's 11th or whatever. So still pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Who's your scold for week 10?
I'm gonna stick with the same game I was talking about. Honestly, one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen. Titus Howard. How are you going to strip sack your own quarterback? At what point did you think, yes, I need to grab the ball in my quarterback's hand and I need to pull it away? What is this?
The man was befuddled. He was flummoxed. He was discombobulated. But none of those things are good things.
No. And like, I feel like it's not as funny as the butt fumble, but it's up there in terms of how bad of a play it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a rough one.
Just absolutely incredible.
Speaking of rough ones, my scold of the week. And I want you all to know that giving out this scold is probably the scold that's going to bring me the most joy of any scold this entire year. And it is Mac Jones and Doug Peterson, the Wombo combo. Because The Patriots traded Mac Jones to the Jaguars for a 6th-round pick this past offseason. So basically nothing. They said, get this guy the fuck off of our team. And Mac Jones proceeded to have a good preseason for the Jags, facing all second stringers and vanilla defenses. And Doug Peterson proceeded to jab at the Patriots and say, well, sometimes he goes back to his old Patriot ways, but we think he's going to be pretty good. And Mac Jones also had some comments for New Englanders after he was traded. Like, first, he wrote a goodbye letter, which we talked about that. And I was like, how is he the worst player ever to write a goodbye letter to a team in a city that hates him? But I say all this to say that Mac Jones and Doug Peterson both talk shit about the Patriots after Mac Jones got to Jacksonville. Well, Mac Jones got his first start and his first regular season action in a Jacksonville Jaguars jersey this past weekend against the Minnesota Vikings and just absolutely proceeded to shit the bed and look probably like at least as bad, maybe worse than he ever did in New England. Like the first drive of the game, he had a 1-yard rushing touchdown on a quarterback sneak, and people are like, there are still Mac Jones defenders out there for some reason, and people who are like, we ruined Mac Jones, like we being the Patriots. It's not Mac Jones' fault, it's the Patriots' fault. I then proceeded to watch Mac Jones shit his pants for approximately 4 hours on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings, including getting the ball down 12-7 twice in the fourth quarter. He had 2 drives to try to win the game, and he got picked off on both of them. And I was like, this is the Mac Jones that I knew. This was the Mac Jones that I threw a party for when we got rid of his ass, surrounded by this better offense and all these weapons and this stuff that was going to go so well for him as Trevor Lawrence's backup. He goes 14 of 22 for 111 yards, 2 interceptions. Just fucking thing of beauty. And you know what, Matt? Simultaneously, while that was going on, you know what I was doing? I was watching Drake May, the future of the New England Patriots, the quarterback and the leader of my team and the leader of my heart. I love Drake May. He's everything that Mac Jones wasn't, from the rocket launcher arm to the athleticism to the intangibles in the locker room to like the situation around him is shitty. And you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't pout and cry and throw fits on the field. He doesn't call the North Carolina coaching staff behind the greatest coach of all time's back and ask for advice. I was so happy to see Mac Jones play so badly on Sunday, Matt. And at the same time, watching Drake May beat the Bears. I was like, this is the best moment I've had as a Patriots fan since we beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. That it really was. This past Sunday was this been the peak of the last 6 years of my Patriots fandom.
Well, I look forward to watching Mac Jones play equally as horribly this week.
Can't wait. Bart Starr. This is my Bart Starr moment. Can't wait. We'll see you in Detroit. Mac Jones. Good God, he's so bad. So bad. And I can't wait till he throws a pissy fit against the Lions this weekend. All right. Gambling picks for week 11. Not a good week last week for us. Matt and I were talking about this. It's been a tough stretch for us lately. I wouldn't say we've had a particularly great week in a little while, but it's time to bounce back. I was so pissed off at your team this past week because they won, but the spread was 3.5 and they did not cover. And like, we should have known they were going to cover after I heard 50 different news outlets say, but they're 47-15 against the spread with Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
I said that on the pod last week, and then I heard like 17 other podcasts say it, and I was like, oh, fuck. They're not going to cover. But they did win. Our field goal kicker on Thursday night thing failed for the first time. Derrick Henry somehow did not hit 90 rushing yards in a 35-34 game. Like I said, the Lions didn't cover. The Falcons lost to the Saints, which like maybe the Falcons should have been on the panic meter. Goddamn Falcons. Uh, the only thing that did hit was the podcast pick that we replaced the long shot pick with was the Bills -4 against the Colts. So thank goodness for that. We are back this week with an absolute banger of a week for the NFL. So it starts on Thursday night football. Washington could be fighting Georgia's at the Eagles, which like Eagles are 7-2, Georgia's are 7-3. So another banger of a Thursday night game after an epic one last week with Ravens Bengals. Sunday, you have the Ravens at the Steelers. Ravens at Steelers, Seahawks 49ers. You have the Chiefs at the Bills and the Bengals at the Chargers. Like that's a
Yeah,
banger
that
every
that's a
window.
lineup. I don't remember.
Yeah, Seahawks at 49ers. Like there's a lot of bad games this weekend, but like I mean, to look at, you could potentially watch like Thursday night, could be fighting Georges and Eagles. 1 o'clock Sunday, Ravens Steelers. 4 o'clock Sunday, Chiefs Bills. 8 o'clock Sunday, Bengals Chargers. That is a banger of a weekend. So we'll start the gambling picks with Thursday night. I'm gonna go somewhere that I'm not super comfortable with because I hate player props, especially big ones. But I am gonna go with Eagles running back Saquon Barkley over 95.5 rushing yards. He's been insane this
Yeah,
season in this Eagles offense, and Washington is 28th in rushing yards allowed at 142 per game. And like we mentioned last week, they're actually pretty good against the pass. So the Eagles are going to try to get this done on the ground. Over the course of their last three, Washington is actually allowing 167 yards per game on the ground. Not great. I think Philly takes advantage of this and the Eagles eat. I actually looked at Saquon's total yards, rushing and receiving, and it's like 110.5. But I think the majority of his work is going to be on the ground against this defense. So Saquon over 95.5, that is -110.
I think I am gonna go in a similar direction, and just because I feel like it's safe. I know it's -190, but I'm gonna take the anytime touchdown for Saquon. The man jumped over another human being backwards. Like I'm gonna trust that he can get into the end zone.
Yeah, I looked at that one too. I think that's a safe pick. All right, Sunday or weekend games, because you're allowed to. We never pick Monday Night Football, but you're allowed to. I'm going to make a pick that I hate, and I feel in my bones is incorrect, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it is the Bills money line against the Kansas City Chiefs of -130. So just the Bills just have to win. Kansas City has to lose. They have to lose. They've just been like flying by the seat of their pants every week now. Like you blocked a 17-yard field goal that would have won the game. If you are the Bills and Kansas City is coming to Buffalo in a nationally televised game, it's 4:30. It's not really like prime time, but it's still the later slot. The Bills fans are going to be liquored up, be tailgating since like 8 a.m. and breaking tables. If you're Josh Allen and you cannot beat Patrick Mahomes in this game, home game, you're playing well. The Chiefs are just like, they're undefeated, but they're just barely winning all the time. And they're just like begging for someone to beat them. If you can't win this one, you will never win one. Ever. This has to be the game for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. It absolutely has to, but I don't feel like it will be. Because Patrick Mahomes, as an underdog, I think is like 20-1 in his career. And I hate this pick, and I know I shouldn't make it, but this has to be it for you, Josh. If we go 4-1 this weekend, this is the one we lose. If we
Yeah,
go
probably.
if we go 1-4 this weekend, this is one of the ones we lose. Like, I don't feel good about it, but it has to happen. Uh, what's your pick for the weekend?
I am going with the game that I feel much better about than you'd feel about that one. I am going to take an alternate line for the Detroit
Oh
Lions
God.
because McCorkle Jones is starting again. Um, I I'm going to take the Lions at -20.
This
I
isn't this isn't even the long shot bet. What are the odds on Lions -20?
plus 206.
Hmm.
The line was set at -13, so it's actually not more than a score off of what Vegas thinks.
Yeah, it actually on certain apps it's already up to 13 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, the Lions are probably the best team in the league, and Mac Jones sucks.
Yeah.
It's a match made in heaven.
And I mean, like, outside of the last 20 minutes of that game, the Lions played like shit on Sunday. Like, I fully expect them to come out and execute a much cleaner game from the get-go. I don't expect them to play with their food very much this week.
Fair enough. All right. I know we said we weren't going to do the long shot bet of the week anymore because it hasn't hit in a while, but there's one that I feel good about this weekend. Matt, Will Levis is starting for the Tennessee Titans this weekend. The only appropriate reaction to Will Levis starting for the Titans is that you instantly go and bet on the other team's defense to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Vikings, anytime touchdown, plus 390.
Feels like easy money.
Yeah. I reserve the right. It's Wednesday. If Will Levis does not start for the Viking or for the Titans for some reason against the Vikings this weekend, I reserve the right to change this pick to Packers -5 over the Bears. So if you turn on your TVs and it's like, hey, Mason Rudolph is starting for the Titans, we lied. I'm changing the pick. But as long as Will Levis is on that field, I'm picking the other team's defense to score a touchdown because it happens way too often. So that's plus 390. So bets for the weekend: Thursday Night Football, Saquon Barkley over 95.5 rushing yards and an anytime touchdown. Bills money line against Kansas City, Lions -20 against Jacksonville, and then the long shot bet of Vikings defense to score an anytime touchdown against the Titans this weekend, with the right reserved to change it to Packers -5 at the Bears. Because that was the other pick. That's the pick I actually felt good about, but decided to go with the Bills anyway, which I will regret because they are the Bills. All right. That is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. And you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. College football this weekend. Not a lot of huge games, but one very, very important one. And that is the number 7 Tennessee Volunteers at number 12 Georgia. Georgia lost to Ole Miss this past weekend, and their offense has been in complete disarray. And the committee said, like, yeah, we dropped them because the offense has been so bad. Tennessee has one of the best defenses in the entire country. And if Tennessee hands Georgia a third loss, we could very well see a college football playoff without Georgia at all.
Yeah.
So Tennessee's got the chance to like land the knockout punch right now, because if they give them a third loss and their only 2 games remaining are Massachusetts and Georgia Tech,
Yeah.
I don't think we see Georgia. Like
Nope.
this is win or go home for the dogs.
Which is not how anyone foresaw the first 12-team playoff going.
Yeah, to have like the playoffs expand to 12 and to not have Georgia at all, and like still kind of the potential hanging over our heads
Yeah.
of like not having Alabama if they
Yep.
pick up a third loss.
But Indiana is like pretty much certainly in. Look.
Indiana's good.
I know.
Indiana's like legitimately a good team, which actually like for all of we'll probably talk about this on another pod coming up, but Indiana's number 5 in the country right now at 10-0. They are legitimately good. And I think that this is like everything that's right with college football playoff expansion. Because if it was a 4-team playoff, Indiana could probably be the undefeated Big Ten champs and like find a way to get left out. And now with 12 teams, you can't leave them out. Nor do you want to because
No.
they're legitimately good. And they they're off this week, but they play Ohio State next week. And it's going to be
Yeah.
like number 2 versus number 5, Ohio State and Indiana. And like that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I will enjoy that. But yeah, right now, 4 of the top 5 teams are from the Big Ten, which it's hard to remember sometimes that Oregon is a Big Ten team now. But yeah,
Yeah.
Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. Texas at number 3, spoiling that. But I saw the first couple brackets for what the college football playoff would look like, and I'm like, yeah, like I still stand by the point that I think expanding the playoffs has made the regular season a little bit lackluster, where some of the things don't matter as much. But I think once we get to the playoff games, that's going to be the best couple weeks of college football that we've potentially ever seen,
Yeah.
or at least seen in a long time. Because like the college football playoff with 4 teams is a banger. I think with 12 teams, it's going to be, we're talking 4 weeks of like awesome, awesome football. So good on you, college football playoffs. But until then, my friend, I will see you later.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye, mom.
Bye, Robin.